Okay, so you should now be able to see optimal digestion part 3. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so last week we were talking about kind of how to increase bowel regularity. So kind of looking at increasing motility and mobility through the digestive tract. And one of the reasons, obviously, is to be able to pass stools very regularly and kind of eliminate waste as optimally as possible. Because obviously, if we're not doing that, then we're going to cause a bit of an interest in the gut from the immune system. And as we'll see in a minute, if we've got heightened activity of the immune system in and around the gut, then we can get something called leaky gut syndrome. We can also obviously get inflammation, and we can get a build-up of toxicity within the gut that can kind of sit and create issues within the gut itself. But also because the gut wall, the lining of the intestines, is really naturally quite permeable, a lot of those toxins can actually kind of start to leach back into the blood supply, into the bloodstream. They circulate around the system, back to the liver, which keeps getting overloaded, back to the kidneys, etc. So we just kind of get this increased or a raising of the level of toxic load within the body if we're not going toilet regularly enough. And I know that's an issue for so many women. It can also be related to cycle and hormones, etc. But one of the biggest things is eating foods that are irritating and cause intolerance, because that just shuts down the whole natural flow of that top-down mechanism of digestion. And also just not having enough good fibres, not having enough water going in on a regular basis. But quite often, if people are drinking a lot of water and still eating quite fibrous foods, but they don't have the right enzyme activity within the stomach, then again they're not going to get the same or the optimal stimulation for gut movement. So that was last week, and hopefully I gave you a really nice remedy for getting the bowels moving, which works every time if done properly, and of course if you have the right enzymes in the system. So today we're really talking more about gluten intolerance and leaky gut, because it's a hot topic at the moment. I still have people sort of saying like, oh, it's such a fad thing now, going gluten-free, everyone's going gluten-free, what's all that about? And the reality is that we have actually, as a population, increased our intolerance or sensitivity to gluten by about 40% in the last 50 to 100 years. And that's come about in a lot of research, so that it's being proven that we now have so many people, 40% more people now have antibodies, and if they don't get their blood tests done, suggestions that they have this kind of intolerance or immune reaction to gluten. And the big question is really, why is that? So there's a few issues, a few reasons, and one of the big reasons is probably because of the excess toxic load that we have going through our systems in general now. We've got this massive overload, and then gluten just comes along and adds a whole kind of another layer to that. But also the quality of wheat products, the quality of gluten that's getting into our system is really poor. A lot of it's highly processed, and of course if we're getting imports and things from the US, then most likely it will be genetically modified, which the body just has no idea how to deal with these genetically modified organisms. So let's crack on anyway and take a little look. So we're looking really at this intestinal health, and I've said earlier in other presentations that the health of your gut is really the key to the health of your overall body. And I know from working with some of you on the call that you've personally experienced, and I have as well, how issues within the digestive tract, be it a dysbiosis where we've got an imbalance between good and bad bacteria, or startings of a leaky gut syndrome, or not having enough digestive enzymes in the system. We've just got such an array of issues that can go on in the gut and upset the lining of the stomach. So not only are we talking about gluten, there's other things that can affect the lining of the gut as well, things like medications. So again, it's a real catch-22. If you're on long-term prescriptive medications, you're going to be interfering with the quality of your intestinal wall and the integrity of the intestinal wall. Obviously, processed foods, fast foods, chemically laden foods are all very destructive, not only to our natural enzymes, but also to the physical tissue, the cells of the wall, of the gut wall itself. So we should really have a very...
Sorry.
Hello, doggy. That's cute. So
sorry about that.
That's okay. If you guys want to, you can just, if you press the mute button on your kind of screen software, then you can make as much noise as you like, and we won't hear it. So we should have a really good amount of enzymes. We should have really good levels of good bacteria lining our gut as well, and they play a huge role in the immune system, which we will see next week and the week after. I'm going to really go into what's called our microbiomes, very, very important for overall health. We should have more good bacteria than bad, though we should still have a few bad in there. That kind of keeps the balance. We have a little bit of yeast, we have a little bit of fungi, but again, not too much. And if that gets out of hand, we run into problems. So the gut needs to be really balanced, and it's a pretty tricky thing to do, because if we think about the gut, it's actually basically an extension of the outside world, because it's this hollow tube that goes obviously from the mouth all the way through to your bottom, and it's very exposed, it's very open to toxins, to things that we breathe in. Obviously the foods that we're eating is the first contact with the body is through obviously that canal. So all the bugs, all the bacteria, and of course all the trigger foods that we can be potentially eating are getting first and foremost taken in through the gut. So this whole canal, the cells in this organ are really bombarded all the time. So it's no wonder now they're getting quite a few issues going on. So again, needless to say that actually 70 to 80% of our body's entire immune system actually resides in the gut. So we've got an immune system in our brain, we've got one obviously in our blood system, and then the majority of our, obviously in our liver as well, but the majority of our immunity resides in the gut, and that is because it's the most exposed, most at risk, I guess, part of the body. So we're going to go in now and talk about the topic of the day, which is leaky guts, gluten, and how this it really does create an array of issues within the body. So we know for a fact now, there's been research done by a functional doctor called Dr. Alessio Fasano, and he has headed up the research into celiac for many, many years, and he has proven that everyone who eats gluten, whether you have a sensitivity or an allergy, or you're asymptomatic, whatever you are, everybody actually gets an increase in gut permeability every time they eat gluten, because gluten's the gliadin molecule within gluten actually stimulates a molecule in the body called zonulin, and zonulin increases the permeability of our gut wall. So the cells of our gut wall are connected with tiny little gaps in between them, these junctions, and with the presence of zonulin, these junctions increase in space, and obviously if they increase too much, then we get more than nutrients passing through the wall. We actually get toxins and food particles and other things, bugs and bacteria that shouldn't be getting into the body, and they're escaping into the bloodstream. This of course aggravates the entire system, which then leads to what we call systemic inflammation. But for most people who are asymptomatic or don't have a sensitivity and don't really have any major issues with gluten, which are few now. There's only a few people that can really get away with it. They're still getting increased permeability, but it just might be so that for whatever reason their body is built in such a way that these gaps that increase can actually close and repair really quickly, because the gut is actually a very, very fast replicating organ. The cells are, replicate all the time. So that's just an absolute fact. Now we know that everyone who eats gluten is going to get increased permeability, and that's something that is, we can't avoid. So just to give you an idea, some of you may have seen these before, but this is what a normal gut should look like. The inside of a normal gut wall should look like. Going along to the right hand side, you'll see a full-blown kind of celiac condition and what the gut ends up looking like with this massive leaky syndrome going on. So normally our gut should have finger-like projections, and these are what we call the villi and the microvilli. So the reason we have finger-like projections of cells within the gut is so that we increase surface area for absorption. So the more absorbable ability we have, the better chance we have at getting all our nutrients in and being healthy and getting everything we need. So you can see intolerance and allergy. So a full-blown allergy is what we call celiac, and then of course you've got non-celiac gluten sensitivity or intolerance, which is slightly different mechanisms or pathways of dysfunction, but equally quite debilitating for most people. So as I say, Alessio Fasano, he has been looking into celiac at the University of Maryland for many, many years, and he's shown this time and time again how damaging gluten can be. So one of the things that has come up on the Gluten-Free Society website, I was just having a look the other day, and it's just a nice kind of diagram here to sort of show how gluten can be quite damaging. So obviously we know it can damage the gastrointestinal tract and cause leaky gut, but also because it's what we call an anti-nutrient, gluten, and it will stop the absorption of other nutrients, so particularly B vitamins. And when we have B vitamin deficiencies, particularly B12, you're pretty much guaranteed that you've had a lifetime of gluten intolerance, gluten allergy. And then of course this can alter our good bacteria as well. We know that B12 and good bacteria are very closely linked. They rely on each other, and when we get a dysbiosis in the body, an overgrowth of yeast and fungi leading to things like candida, again it's likely to be overexposure to gluten and other various nasties and trigger foods and things that have gotten into the system over the years and altered our digestive function. So all of this long term can really lead to a significant amount of inflammation in the body. So this thing called leaky gut, which we've talked about, increased permeability, where we're getting food intolerances developing because we've got food particles coming through from the gut into the bloodstream, attracting the attention of the immune system, and then of course basically the immune system's getting all overly excited and all out of whack. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up. So quite a cascade and array of complications and complexities that can go on just from not eating the right foods and overexposing the gut to not only things like gluten but sugar, very inflammatory foods, alcohol, obviously also quite inflammatory. So just another little diagram here to demonstrate how leaky gut can affect the whole entire body. So things like brain function, there's a really strong connection between the gut and the brain. Again, there's research suggesting that poor gut function can lead to things like depression and anxiety, and in children things like ADD or ADHD. We also, an interesting fact is that the majority of our serotonin, which is obviously our happy neurotransmitters, our happy hormones, is made within the gut. So again, if we don't have good gut function, that's going to impact on all other aspects of the function of the gut. So if we have poor digestion, that will also affect things like serotonin production. So that's going to affect brain activity. Things like skin issues, because of the inflammation that is kind of generated within the body. Obviously issues with actual digestion, passing of stools, etc. We talked about that last week with constipation. fatigue and adrenal issues, joint pain, joint issues, and then of course other common inflammation and immune issues to do with sinus, mouth ulcers, these sorts of things. It can all, weirdly enough, be linked to gluten insensitivity and the cause of leaky gut. So what actually kind of gives rise to the kind of the inflammation that goes on is we have our white blood cells, which are our main immune cells. Whenever there's a foreign body in the body, so it could be a bug or a virus, normally the immune system produces these or has the white blood cells which produce these inflammatory cytokines, which are basically killer cells. So they go in, kill off what shouldn't be in the body, destroy those foreign invaders, and then everything kind of settles back to normal. But when we have chronic irritation or chronic kind of aggravation of the immune system, these pro-inflammatory cytokines, these molecules that create constant inflammation in the body, are always being produced because the body perceives that there's something always to fight within the body. And so we get this chronic inflammation, and when we have chronic inflammation we get free radical damage, and free radical damage obviously is destruction of our cells, which then causes more inflammation. So we've got this constant cycle, this catch-22 of just chronic inflammatory processes going on in the body. We know from the research that's coming out now, we're moving away from digestive, just on a tangent here, but for long-term health, how much we can manage inflammation in the body will determine how well we are in the future. So we know that chronic inflammation underpins just about every metabolic and chronic condition that is known now. Things like even cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, obviously arthritis, all autoimmune issues, most likely to come from these kind of triggers, things that are coming into the body and aggravating the immune system in such a heavy way. So really, really important to consider what you're eating for overall health, and that's all to do with how it can affect the gut. We haven't even touched on, liver function and all these other kind of issues that are really kind of paramount these days. But one of the simplest kind of gold standard approach to dealing with inflammation and dealing with digestive issues in this way is something that we call in functional nutrition the 4R approach. So we kind of go through a system of removing triggers and removing chemicals and toxins. So we go through like detoxification processes. Then we replace what we think is missing, or we know to be missing, things like enzymes, stomach acid, and of course nutrients. So a lot of people, because of these long-term digestive issues, aren't absorbing their B vitamins. They're not absorbing zinc and magnesium and other nutrients that are really vital for the system. So we need to put all that back in. We need to repair, obviously, if we've got a leaky gut, we've got increased permeability, we need to really try and repair some of the holes and the loss of integrity in the gut wall. So we use things like aloe vera, glutamine, and of course really healing foods. And then repopulate, so we're really talking about the microbiome here, the good and bad bacteria balance. So we want to massively increase our beneficial bacteria population within the gut, because it has a huge carryover into immune balance, so calming the immune system down when it's overactive, also weight management, and brain function as well. So again, there's that gut-brain kind of connection. So really important to have a balanced microbiome for long-term health. So next week we're going to cover what I would recommend for a 4R approach in terms of the diet. So what are the healthy protocols for a digestive system? What do we kind of need to do at each level, from kind of the stomach all the way through to the colon? We're talking about naturally gluten-free foods here, so not going to the supermarket and just picking things off the gluten-free shelf, because they have issues of their own. And so we'll cover obviously the what, the how, and the when to kind of eat these sorts of foods for generating a really healthy gut long term. It can take time, particularly if your gut issues have been for a long time, but over time you'll really start to notice an improvement. And not only will that help to kind of reduce inflammation specifically in the gut, but throughout the entire body as well. So that's the short presentation on gluten intolerance there. I'm just going to come out of this and stop sharing my screen and try and see you guys again. Hello. Here we are. Are you all with me? All good? So how do you find that information? I'm not sure how much time we have left on this timer, but I hope we've got time. Oh, there's Colette. Hi, Colette. I know you're on mute, so just hello. Any questions on that?
There's a lot to take in, actually.
Yeah. It is. Go on.
You talked about the repopulating of the microbiome, and you're going to cover that next week. But what are you talking about exactly there?
So we're talking about your probiotics. Yeah, which there are, dozens of strains. Okay, we've got 10 minutes. That's cool. We've got dozens of strains that we really need, and what's really interesting is most of the probiotics that you would buy over the counter from Holland and Barrett or somewhere like that, they've only got 2 or 3 strains, and quite often poorly manufactured, so they're probably the life force behind them is not very good. So we're using we're talking about really high quality probiotics. So I'll go into, there's a new product that's coming out which Karen has her hands on already. She hasn't done it yet. It's called Purify Kit, and it's to completely and utterly reboot and restimulate the microbiome, but at the same time cleansing, at the same time repairing. So it's kind of a system that covers that 4R approach all in one, which is pretty amazing. But of course you've got things like, if you're looking at the Nature's Sunshine products, Lisa, which you're familiar with, the probiotic, the Pro B11 is a really good place to start.
I've still got some of that. I mean, does it go off? Does it expire?
Yeah. So you want to ideally consume a pot would last you about a month or maybe 6 weeks if you're taking it regularly, and you've got to really keep it in the fridge, properly sealed. So if you've had it for a while, bin it and get some new ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is it worth waiting for this?
No, not for you. I would start as soon as you possibly can, because you need to get, because of you're on B12 injections as well, aren't you? So you really need those good bacteria going in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the dosage? Just to remind me.
I would take 2 a day, 1 in the morning, 1 at night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll get some of those.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, good. How are you, Colette?
Good. Now, it was me. I was on mute because it was my dog that was going mental.
Oh, was your doggy? Oh, it's all right. That's okay. That's okay. Do you have any questions?
No, I mean, I'm very interested in kind of the next step in terms of the microbiome. I've done the microbiome, actually.
Yeah, great.
But kind of tying it into the gluten-free and the diet side of things, I'm really interested in kind of following that up because I felt so well after I did it, basically.
Great. Oh, cool. So yeah, absolutely. That's the key thing, is the maintenance, because once you've done the microbiome, you've kind of rebooted that process, the whole system. It's to keep feeding all that good stuff now. So like you might not have been on, we're talking about the fermented foods, so things like sauerkraut and all those sorts of prebiotic foods are really important. So yeah, next week we'll go through a kind of really, really top end diet, if you like, the ultimate of what you could be doing for your guts to kind of continue on from the microbiome. And also I would suggest twice a year maybe doing that process, so obviously when it comes out again, going through that. Yeah, great. Well, thank you for joining anyway. It's really nice to have you on. Hopefully I'll see you next week as well. Yeah,
definitely.
Cool. Karen, have you got any questions?
No.
No, you're still hiding.
No. Yes.
Okay, cool. So what I'll do is, obviously this has been recorded, and I'll just post the presentation recording part. So if you're not okay with you guys being on video, that's cool. And And then next week we'll go through that that protocol. And any questions in the meantime, just drop me an email, or actually probably better to put it in the group, and then I can answer if it's a question that everyone can benefit from. But if it's really personal, you can just personal message me. That's fine as well. And the other thing is suggestions for more topics after we've covered digestion and the microbiome in the next couple of weeks. There's things that I could talk about forever, but if it's not of interest to anyone, there's no point. So, anything that's really on your mind, anything that you really want to cover. So gluten's always been a big one. Lots of people ask about that. So obviously we're doing that. And then like liver health is really, really key. And then Karen, you asked about DNA testing, which I will cover as well at some point. Yeah. So
certainly the Emma would be of real interest.
What's that one, Colette?
Certainly the liver health.
Liver health, yeah.
Which would be really interesting to me.
Okay. Cool. Okay, great. It's one of my favourite topics, so that's fine. Okay, cool. Excellent. All right, ladies. So if there's anything else before we sign out, I'm just aware that it might kick us off soon.
You look amazing, by the way.
Oh, really? Thank you.
Yeah, you look fabulous.
I actually didn't have a lot of sleep last night, so that's good.
Oh, you lucky devil to look that good.
Oh, thank you.
No sleep. I didn't have any sleep either, and that's why you're not seeing me.
Actually, there was one more question.
Yeah.
I've been reading up about certified organic products, beauty products.
Oh, yeah.
And from your time here in the UK, can you recommend any products, for body lotions, bath oils, or shower cream?
So, my favourite products that I still use now are Dr. Hauschka, which I think I've mentioned to you before.
Yeah.
The thing is that with any beauty products, whether it's organic, natural, or whatever, it's got to be right for your skin, because even the most purest products I've tried from other companies, and although they're great for some people, they don't agree with my skin. So it's about finding what works for you. But certainly Dr. Hauschka works really well for me, and you can find them I think they're in John Lewis, and they're online as well. M&S actually now stock Dr. Hauschka as well, I've noticed.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And then I use a New Zealand brand called Trilogy, which you can get in Holland and Barrett, which is a rose hip oil. And use that as that's quite a good one for spots and kind of blemishes, but also instead of a night cream, I put the oil on at night. And then in the morning it's all just kind of soaked in, and it's very high in antioxidants, so it's really nourishing. What else? I also use a product called Arc, which is a London made, and they're not certified organic, but they're kind of above organic. They're all natural, really, really good products called Arc, and you can get those online as well. They have ARK, yeah, they're called Age Aware Skincare, and they do different kind of different cleansers and moisturizers, etc., depending on your skin age, which is quite cool. But they're based in Putney in London, so they're UK made, really, really lovely, gorgeous products. But they're online as well, so I'll post some links in the group. Yeah. And Neil's Yard too, which you can get in the UK very, very easily. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we've got less than a minute before it will cut us off. So I'll sign out and say thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. It's nice to see you guys again. And just anyone that you feel who could benefit from just listening in or asking questions online, just get them to sign in. And even if I haven't met them before, it's not a problem. I can try and help them out where I can. Okay, so have a good evening, you guys, and I'll post in the group, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye, ladies.